So I want to circle back to quilts for a moment. Whether you're really good at it or bad at it, meaning novice, how long does it take to make an average quilt? I mean, I would have personally no patience to be able to do that kind of work. It just seems to me you have to really like that kind of, I guess, solitary, or maybe there are quilt clubs. I honestly don't know. I'm just curious.
Well, first of all, I don't know the answer to that question because they're all different.
Right.
It depends on the kind of quilt somebody's making. If it's a tied quilt, it takes a lot less time. If it's something where the person is an incredible quilt maker and the stitches are very close together, that's going to take a long time. And yes, there are quilt guilds, there are quilt clubs where women made quilts together. The funny thing is, from an art perspective, you can actually tell when you're looking at a quilt, say a 19th century quilt, that you might think was made by a quilt group, but you can tell the hands of different people on the quilt. You know, because it's a style.
It's a different style, too.
People have different styles, and so when a quilt has been made by a number of different people, it's usually fairly obvious. There are lots of myths around quilts. And one of them is that they all were made in quilting bees, but really most quilts were made individually.
So is there like a standard universal size for a quilt?
You have to do it according to the bed.
Makes
so,
sense.
you know, you have a double bed and you want a 10 to 12 inch drop.
Gotcha.
Or a queen size bed, you want a 10 to 12 inch drop. You know, in the 30s, 1930s, you know, there were lots of twin beds. So you'd see pairs of quilts being made that would only fit twin beds and would be identical. And then, of course, you had large quilts, and we would call them king-size quilts. But generally, those very large, early 1800s quilts were made for beds that had trestles underneath. So the bed was really tall. So it wasn't that the bed was wide as much as the bed was tall. So the quilt was bigger to cover the, you know, the trestle that was the trestle bed that was underneath.
What's the best piece of advice ever given to you, Shelly? And again, it can be more than one, personal or professional. I'm curious about this.
If it isn't life-threatening, it's only details.
Oh, that's like a bumper sticker.
How's that?
I like that one.
Because that centers you. And I'm all about trying to stay centered. And that really, you know, if you say that to somebody, then all of a sudden they sort of step back, you know, and think, wow. Here I was in the weeds with the things that really didn't matter, and this really matters.